All right, perfect. So, just before we get started, I just want to give you a little intro about myself. I've been with the MMAC for 6 years now. Oh gosh, 6 years. Wow. My first 4 years was with Macappella, the co-ed competitive group. I spent 1 year with the Macafellas, and I'm currently with Treble Threat. Um, Also, last year I started a solo a cappella band in 2021, Our Land Vocals. And also with that, I started learning about audio engineering a year ago. So one of the struggles, especially with a cappella with the pandemic, is the closure of all live performances. And I know, like with all clubs and the arts in general, like that's a huge part of it. So me and a lot of other artists were looking at what other avenues can we explore while still maintaining our passion. So I started to get into audio engineering. So I started out with YouTube tutorials, watching, just trying to get a feel for what this huge area is. Um, and then as I got a little bit more into it, I started taking a bit more classes. So one of them being a pop music songwriting writing and production course hosted by Charlie Puth, which some of you may have heard of. Um, I've also taken a sound engineering course from Shaw Academy, and I've also attended a lot of workshops. So some from a company called Voices Only and its founder Corey Slutsky, and other Canadian a cappella group conferences, specifically CANEC, have also given some presentations on sound engineering. And yeah, since then, since I started this whole thing a year ago, I've released a solo EP, arranged, mixed, mastered by myself, and I've started mixing audio for other a cappella groups, including McMaster's own Treble Threat. So, yeah, it's been a wacky time, and I'm really excited to be giving this presentation for you guys. First of all, we sent out a poll earlier in the month, so thank you guys for those who filled it out. It was very helpful when trying to come up with ideas for what I want to talk about for this workshop. Generally, what I was seeing is that a lot of people who are interested in the workshop um, have either very little to no experience with mixing, um, and and people really wanted to know like what it is and the workflow of that. So, giving taking those ideas, I've crafted this presentation, which I hope it's more tailored towards the beginners or people trying to learn a bit about the production process for the first time. So, um, there's some experts there. I mean, hopefully I can give you something, maybe a new technique or a new workflow idea that you haven't thought of before. But this workshop will be mainly tailored towards beginners and trying to cover what audio production is in a way that's simplified and easy to follow from start to finish. Right. So, to talk a little bit about the agenda of what I have planned today. So, I have this presentation, and I also have a my DAW open. So, I'll be going back and forth between the presentation and doing like a live demonstration. So, I'll be going over the concepts in the presentation and then putting them into practice um, with the mix that I've been working on for the past month. So first, to start off, I'll give you guys a quick introduction to audio production. So it can be boiled down to 4 easy steps and what you need to start. Going over the recording process. So what, in my opinion, makes a good recording from an audio producer's perspective. And going over my workflow for editing recordings. Then we'll get into the mixing phase. So specifically how to set up your stereo field and useful effects that I like to use. And finally, I'll go over a bit about mastering, so ensuring your mix sounds good on all platforms. All right, so I highly recommend for this part of the presentation, before we get in, is that you're putting on some headphones. I'm going to play you a track from the previous ICCAs. So this group made it to the finals, and they won the a special award for the best mix. So what I want you guys to do is I want you to listen to this song and pick up one thing, anything. It could be the arrangement, could be something with the mix, could be the vocals, any of the effects, something that stands out to you. And I want you to type it in the chat as we listen on.
Take my hand now, won't you follow me? Tell me now, what is it you see? Faces I can't ever seem to trust. They rise up slow and swallow me like dust. Hush now, friends, and try to dry your eyes. Our fate's a bullet hiding in disguise. Shadows fall but never reach the ground. Rise from the ashes, I know our time is now.
And so, they have summoned up thunderclouds and rainfall. But it is rain that makes flowers grow. The world breaks everyone, and afterwards, many are strong in the broken places. We are all broken, but that's how the light gets in.
Darling, I am getting closer, hold on tight. And
oh, it hasn't been so easy. I'm fighting for my life.
I could be a warrior, yes I am a warrior. There's no need to worry, look around, it's glorious. Close your eyes and taste the sun. You know how to find me. And I know how to find you. Inside, 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 I'm alive. I could be a warrior, yes I am a warrior.
All right. Yeah, so let's see what you guys said. Yes, panning. Yes, panning. Lots of it. They use that like frequently. Percussion, yeah. Arrangement, yeah, 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 yeah. Reverb, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with all those notes for sure. I think when I first listened to that, the first thing that stood out to me was their vocal effects. So their beatbox or whoever's doing those wind effects in the background, how so subtle it is, but then especially in that middle part where the hi-hats and like the trap snares come in, they're so forward in the mix and it's so prominent, but yet it doesn't overlap with any of the other voices. It's just mind-boggling to me. It's how to make that all work, but they made it work, and it's for like that's why they won best mix. It's really really well done, and yeah, quite an amazing arrangement for sure. All right, so let's introduce audio production so we can all get to that level. So I said we could boil down audio production into four easy steps. So, what are these? So, first, what I want for you guys to take away, if you want anything about audio production, as an audio producer, your role is to take a vision and translate it into an auditory experience. So, whether that's a feeling or expression, that's like we're all musicians. Like we write music to express what we feel. So, um, translating that into a song is a great skill to have as an audio producer. Maybe it's a location. Like maybe you want to make some lo-fi beats for whenever you're studying, or sitting in a cafe, or maybe some mild ambient noise in the background. As an audio producer, it's good to know some mixing tips for getting that effect. And also, it depends on what message you want to send. Like, is this a really sad arrangement? Like you're saying how heartbroken you are. If it's a powerful message, how to translate that into music and how to mix that properly is all this tricks of the trade as an audio producer. So, a good rule of thumb is that a good audio production starts with a good vision. So, having a good idea of what the song is and what the project will look like is a great start. And make sure you have a plan going into it. So, what are these four steps? So, first one, recording. Second, editing. So, you're taking your recording, editing the timing and the tuning, and then mixing. So, on a micro scale. So, taking each track, fine tuning it using effects, panning it, making sure everything is sitting right, and then mastering. So, listening to your entire mix and doing some large scale adjustments on everything to make sure everything sounds cohesive and together. These are all the four steps you need as an audio producer, from conception of an idea to final release. So, what do you need to start doing this? So, I've boiled this down to two lists. So, I have a needs list and a recommended list. So, what you'll need is some sort of microphone, especially if you're doing recording for your group or for yourself. So there's two kinds of microphones you can have. There are USB and an XLR. Um, Personally, I will recommend an XLR because these mics tend to have higher quality than USB, and they're easier to record with, and it's going to be the industry standard. USB mics still can work. You can get good quality out of them. I see a lot of people trending towards using USB mics for podcasts and stuff, but for music, it tends to be XLRs. So if you end up using an XLR mic, you'll need an audio interface. So something that can translate the signal from your microphone into a digital signal that your computer can then read and put into your workflow. And with that, you'll need an XLR cable to connect your mic to this interface. A pop filter, so one of these guys here, to filter out any popping noise, especially if you're recording vocals, those lip smacks and all those sounds you want to avoid. A good pair of over-ear headphones, so especially if you're doing recording, these are a good investment to have, so you can listen to the track while you're recording. You need a good computer or a laptop. I currently use a laptop, and I'm finding now, even my laptop being as fast as it is, it's still not powerful enough to do all the things I want to do with my workstation. So it might be good to invest in a good computer when you're doing this. But depending on what you're working on, you can get away with using a laptop. And finally, probably the most important thing is you'll need a digital audio workstation, or DAW for short. So this is the program that you're going to be putting all your recordings and doing all of your work in. So, and with many DAWs come effects. So I've listed some of the effects that you will definitely need for mixing and mastering your songs. Most DAWs come with this, but in case they don't, I've made a list here of the things you should invest in first. So you have EQ, or equalization, compression, reverb, delay, pitch correction, and a level meter, some way to assess how loud your tracks are. So now, some optionals that I have. So a USB or MIDI piano. So if you're a arranger, it would be good to have, um, just to kind of get an idea for like what chords you want, and it works especially well with the DAW. So you can make learning tracks or click tracks like relatively quickly, but you don't necessarily need one. Studio monitors. Now, I recommend using this, especially for mixing. But if you have a good pair of headphones, you can mix using headphones. I've mixed with headphones for the past year, and it works relatively well for me. But the more system, as we'll talk about later, the more systems you have to listen to your song, the better your song will end up being. Headphone amplifier. So what this is in case you're running a recording session with multiple people, multiple microphones, this allows you to connect multiple headphones to the same system. So if you have two, three, or four people coming in to do a recording session, they all can plug in their headphones, receive the same signal, and be singing along together. So if you're doing this solo with one mic, don't really need it, but something to keep in mind. A reflection filter. I've heard mixed reviews about this. So a reflection filter is something. If a pop filter is in front of your mic, the reflection filter would go behind it. So the idea being that any residual like reverberations of your sound coming like bouncing off the walls in wherever you're recording in your room, it will shield whatever you're recording from any reverberation or any room sound. So depending on how reverberant your room is, you might want this, but it can easily be solved by putting a lot of blankets or recording in a room with heavy carpeting. Just play around with it and see what your recording needs are for what room you're planning on recording in, and some additional effects that may come in handy, but I said you don't really need them. So autotune, distortion, vocal line, and like I said, many more out there, like hundreds of thousands of different effects that you can look into that all do different things. All right, so audio producing, step one, we're going to go to the recording phase. So, um, now live performance and recording are two completely separate entities. So, something that maybe a singing technique that you do live may not necessarily transfer over well to a recording situation. So, as an audio producer, it's your job to instruct your singers how to best record so that it makes the audio production job a lot easier. All right. So, what makes a good recording from a recording standpoint? Your singer has a good energy and the character voice is well captured. So, this is probably the most important thing. Like a lot of things an audio producer can fix, but energy is not one of them. So you want to make sure when your singer does the take that it has that your singer has the energy that is reflective of the song you're going for, whether if it's a really sad somber song or really energetic and really energetic and happy song. You want your singer to be able to replicate that, because that's not something you can fix in post. Again, that goes with that your singer make sure they have a good tonal quality. So, um, not shying away from the mic, but at the same time not being over the mic. Sitting a good distance away where it captures the singer's voice well, and all the vowels and consonants are clearly enunciated. Depending on the room you're in, you want to make sure when you're recording that the voice is clearly distinct from any background noise. Now, a little bit of background noise can be managed. There are ways in post that you can remove it, but if there's so much that it's distorting the main track, then it's not going to be fixable, and you're not going to get a good recording out of that. Yeah, good vowels, good cutoff. So timing is very important, and it's one of the things that's probably the most time consuming when you're audio producing and mixing is making sure everything lines up. So make your audio producer's job a lot easier and make sure you sing the things properly and cut off where the sheet music says to cut off. It makes our life so much easier that way. Now, intonation is important, but a lot can be fixed, and I'll show you the wonders of pitch correction. So I recommend the intonation if is close enough, so within a fifth, which Like it's a pretty wide range. If you're hitting the note within a fifth of what the actual note's supposed to be, then it's fixable. It is fixable without having to alter the tone of the voice or the vocal that much. You can get away with a lot. I'll show you. So, this and then the next thing is that there's no scooping or sliding into notes. So unless it's desired. So like glissing when there's no gliss is like instead of right? If you're glissing into notes, that is something that is, at least in my experience, very, very difficult to fix. And it will stick out like a sore thumb if one person is glissing and everyone else is doing the transition cleanly. So if any, if there's any glissing or sliding happening in your take, you might want to get your singer to re-record it because it's like very difficult to fix. And finally, no clipping. So this is on the audio producer side. So making sure your levels are set to. So when you're doing this, try to get a rough take of your vocalist, see how loud or quiet they are, and tuning your microphone accordingly. Um, to make sure they don't clip. So clipping, what that means is that your singing or your input is so loud that the microphone or your software starts to distort the signal. And it'll be very clear when that happens. You'll hear like a popping sound, or the recording will start to distort. And if that happens, that's not fixable. You won't get a good recording that way. You'll have to redo it. So making sure you don't clip is absolutely key. And another thing is try to avoid exaggerated breaths or mouth sounds. Um, again, like small breaths. If you need to take a breath, try to like breathe outside the mic. So if the mic's catching your voice here, try to breathe away from it so that the mic doesn't catch it up too much. But again, like you're gonna have to breathe. So try to make it as subtle as possible. And and then a lot of things I've been running into now is if you have a vocal like dum 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 dum, and your singer is doing that constantly, eventually you're gonna start getting lip smacking sounds, and those are very annoying to fix. So trying to make sure you get those out of the way, it'll make your life a lot easier. All right, what makes a bad recording? So on the flip side, so like a flat character to the vocal, so like if the person sounds like they're reading the sheet music, you can tell that in a recording. It's just you want your song to have energy, to have flow, to have power. You don't want it to sound like it's like someone reading, unless you're doing something like a choral piece or a very classical piece where that is the tone you're going for. Then sure, go for it. But if you're doing like a pop song or R&B song, you really like that has a character to it. That has a vibe to it. It's a vibe you're not going to get if you're reading. So I recommend trying to be off book when you're recording, but if you're on book, try to give as much energy, as much character as you can. Oh, this is a pet peeve of mine. So not being in time with the tempo of the song. So people sending in, if your click track is at 100 BPM and a singer, for whatever reason, is using is singing at a rate of 120 beats per minute, it is so annoying to fix, and it's nigh impossible to fix. You can say, well, you can just slow down the track and that will work. Well, when you slow down things, especially with the vocal instruments, you may be able to get away with it, but with vocals, like it's oh, I don't know. If you've ever tried playing a YouTube video faster or slower, it sounds like you're drunk. That you get the same effect if you try doing this. So please make sure your vocalist is singing in time with the tempo of the track. Yeah, on the flip side, background noise obscures the main vocal. So yeah, if it's to the point where you can't hear the main vocal, it's too much. You're not going to get a good recording. Yeah, clipping, extreme plosives, so P's, popping sounds in recording. These are things that are really annoying and can make a recording unusable. If your singer has an extremely shrill or dark timbre, like you can fix some of those issues with an equalizer, but if it's extreme to a point, you're not going to get a good recording again. So that's something you need to discuss with your vocalist before recording. And big note, big a piece of advice is record every part at least twice. So Whether you're on the part by yourself or you have a soprano, for example, in a soprano section where you have three people singing the top one parts, making sure that you have at least two takes of every part. This this will make the audio producer's job a lot easier, give them more flexibility, and give them more ways to play around with the mix. Um, and it's a good rule of thumb. Me personally, if I'm doing a song by myself, so I'll multi-track my voice, I will do every single part three times, at least three times. Okay, that was a lot. Do we have any questions, Helen? Do we have any questions in the chat?
No, we don't. I think we're good to keep going.
Okay, sweet, awesome, awesome. All right, so you've done your recording. All your vocalists have come in, recorded their part. It sounds great. Now what do you do? All right, so next part after recording is editing. So this is the workflow I use when I'm doing my editing phase of the recordings. So first is I'll tackle the alignment. So maybe things aren't sitting quite right, as the people in the industry say, things need to stay in the pocket, and if things are outside the pocket, you need to move it into the pocket. So this can be achieved through manual adjustment of the tracks, and a big powerful tool that you can use is something called quantization, and I'll show that when I go to my DAW. I'll show you all that. Next, once everything is aligned, then I'll do the pitch correction. So I use a software called Melodyne. There's some other programs I know that are out there that you can achieve the same effect with, but Melodyne seems to be the industry, or people, a lot of people seem to be gravitating towards Melodyne, using Melodyne now. And then number three is do going track by track and doing small edits if needed. So if one track has a really harsh S, you can use some de-essing. There's some plosives in there, a lot of popping, trying to get rid of those and removing any background noise. Okay, so on that note, we are gonna go to the demo. All right. So can everyone see my screen still? This is my DAW. Yeah, everything look okay?
That looks good.
All right, sweet, awesome. Okay, so this is the DAW that I use. It's called Studio One Professional. So every DAW is going to look slightly different. Like the workflow is going to look slightly different, but they all should have the same set of functions. So the way Studio One is set up, so on the left here, all these things are tracks. So you can record anything you want on any of these tracks, and I like to sort them and color code them based on what they are. So, for example, I have high hum one, high hum two, high hum three, tenor one, tenor two, tenor three, tenor four, baritone, baritone, bass, and bass octave. So as you'll see here, I have them numbered 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That's me recording each part three times. So it's not me recording it once and then copying and pasting. That's me recording the same part three times. I find that works the best, especially when you start to mix. What else? Show up here all my kind of like editing tools. So splicing, so cutting a track. The quantize functions up here. I'll show you how to use that. Down here is your mixing window. So here are all the tracks from the left side here. They're now illustrated here with all the faders. So here's where you can put all of your effects and stuff like that. And yeah, so this is a mashup that I've been working on for the past month. So this is just the raw recording. So this is all I've done so far. So I've sat down, arranged the song, and I've recorded some of the parts. So I'll play a little bit for you so you get hear what it sounds like. It's still very rough, but that's why we're doing this. tried. Disaster. Oh, you're a natural disaster. Oh. All right, so that's what it sounds like right now. So this is just the recording, so no really special effects right now. So first step, so assuming your recording is all done, is you want to do some alignment. So let's go to a part. So it's this one. Yeah, I think this is what I was hearing. So let's listen to these three here. So I'll put the metronome's on. So I'm gonna listen to see if this is in time. Okay, so I'm already hearing one of these tracks, or maybe all of them. At least one of them is rushing a bit. So one of them is a bit ahead of the metronome, which is fine. Which is fine. It's not a big deal. So an option that you can do is you go through these notes one by one. You go through these notes one by one. Cut. So this is where the waveform is. This is where I'm singing the note. You can go one by one and fine adjust to make sure everything's in time. A little bit late. Yeah, it sounds better. That sounds better. Yeah. So you can go through for each of the notes and do that for everything. There's a problem with that though. You will never finish because that takes forever. So, thank goodness, a lot of these DAWs have a quantize function. Yeah. So quantize function is up here, and all you need to do is input what note you want to, or what note value you want to set it to. So this part here, I'm singing quarter notes. Da, 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 da. So this will work really well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select quarter note, and then on my keyboard, I'll press Q for quantize. And there you go. So what that does is the software uses an algorithm to look at your waveforms and then automatically shift things to the closest quarter note. So instead of you having to go note by note trying to fix everything, you can use the quantize function. It will do most of the work for you. So let's listen to it now. It already sounds like way better in time. Like it sounds consistent. So at like one simple fix and you're good. So I'm going to do that for all of these because these are all the same parts. So same thing. I've set my quantize to a quarter note because that's what I'm singing. Hit Q. This one, hit Q. And now let's listen to all of them now. Yeah, yeah, that sounds way better for alignment purposes. Yeah, so one simple function saves you hours of time. So use the quantize function. And it doesn't always work. In this case, it worked well because I'm just singing quarter, like this part's just singing quarter notes. But in the event that it doesn't work, maybe it shifts to the wrong quarter note. Like, say for the example, this first note here, say it shifted one quarter note ahead or one quarter note behind. Then you would have to go back in, manually split it, and move it, and then hit quantize again so that it snaps to the right quarter note. But other than that, like quantize works like probably 80% of the time, and it's great for aligning things. So now let's say, so you would do that for all of your recordings here until everything is sitting well. Obviously, for the sake of time, I'm not going to do that. But so you'd go through, do all that quantizing, making sure everything fits right. And then what I like to do after that is doing the pitch correction. So I think I'll use the same track because I heard something really funny in here. There's definitely a sour note in here somewhere. Yeah, Now I'm going to use Melodyne to, it's now that I've fixed the timing, I'm going to fix the pitch. Uh, there we go. All right, so this is Melodyne, and this is what it looks like, okay? So here, these big globs here, this is on average the note I'm singing, and then the lines is kind of illustrating what my voice is doing. So, for example, if I'm doing a vibrato, this line will go up and down and up and down, but the blob is still that general note. And then on the left here, it shows you like what note I'm singing, and then yeah, I'll just go through some of the functions here. So, let's hear it now. All right, so let's say for this note, for example, yeah, not great. I'm supposed to be singing an E flat, and this E flat is, you can see it's right smack dab in the middle of E flat and D. Yeah, like just my luck, right? So I'll click this note, and it tells me, yes, I'm trying to sing an E flat 4, but I am 46 cents flat. So what I do is I can click this and say, okay, I'm 46 cents flat. I want to be 0 cents flat. Put in 0. There we go. So do you see what happened here? So I'll go undo that. So when I put 0, this moves the note and locks it at a solid E flat. So let's hear it now. Yeah, that sounds better. Before, yeah, it's very sour after. Yeah, perfect, perfect. So I think these are all E flats. So what I'm gonna do is, so, and if in case you're worried about having to click 0 for every single note, Melodyne has a nice function where you can just double click the note and it'll automatically snap to the closest note. Another thing to note, which is a good example with this thing here, is that Melodyne doesn't always get it right. So even if you change notes, in this case, I'm changing notes, but Melodyne still thinks I'm singing an E flat. So what you can do is similar to the split function up here, is I can split this note into two separate notes. So I hover over the note until I see this marker on my cursor. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but I'm basically just hovering over until a mark appears, and then I can double click, and now suddenly this has split into two separate notes, which is perfect. That's exactly what I want. So I'm singing an E flat and then to a D flat. So this E flat's 15 cents sharp. Gonna fix that. This D flat is 8 cents, or sorry, flat. Sorry, I don't know if I said flat. This D flat is 8 cents flat. Bring that up. So let's hear it now. Yeah, perfect, perfect, perfect. So, and then you just keep going with all these notes, fixing their tuning. I don't like how I tapered off on that note, so I'm gonna split that, move it up a bit, so it's more in tune. Yeah, that sounds better. Well, I actually just sang the wrong note there. It's supposed to be an F. Yeah. Okay. Wow. Nice voice crack. What? Magic of editing. Even if you voice crack, you can fix it. You say it's a little bit dodgy, but this is why you record everything at least twice. Even though this sounds a bit dodgy, when I put this with two other tracks that are doing the exact same thing, which I hope I sang it better in those two tracks, this doesn't stand out and it still sounds fine. So I'm good. Oh, perfect. Another great job. So again, I'm gonna split that because see now you remember when I said if you're glistening into notes, it makes it very difficult to fix. This is why. Like you see this note before. Like look, this is like an obvious gliss. I can just barely fix it because the gliss isn't that long. But if you, for example, if you're thinking of like an extended gliss, um, and you want that to be one note, it's very difficult to fix. So this probably will still sound a bit dodgy, but we'll see. Not bad, not bad. Okay. Yeah. And let's keep going. Yeah, another example. Melodyne got this wrong, so I changed notes here. So again, I'm gonna split this. Perfect. Now we have two separate notes that I can tune separately. I tried. Yeah. All right, so let's listen to this track now. I tried. Okay. Yeah, it sounds decent. Sounds okay. So now going through and reviewing this, there's some things that I still want to fix. Like, sure, this is a centered note, but look at the line. Like, look at the line. This is what my voice is doing when I'm singing this note. It's starting a little bit sharp, and it's wavering, and it's slightly going flat, and then it's coming back. So these are little artifacts in everyone's voice that's going to be very difficult for your singer to adjust on the fly. But with Melodyne, you can fix that as long like along with the pitch of the overall note, you can fine adjust it. So I'm going to open this function here, and it's called the pitch drift. So this function uses an algorithm to limit how much your pitch is drifting from the center. So right now it's set at 0, and I'm going to set it to, for this note, I'm going to set it to 100. And I want you to look at what the lines are doing when I set this to 100. You see that? So go back to 0, go back to 100. 0, 100. So what this is doing is, even though my voice is wavering on this note, Melodyne is doing is taking the extremes, so the top and the bottom, and then squishing it so it sounds cleaner. So again, before, play this note before, see what it sounds like. I tried. So, bit of a voice crack again. Now, I'm going to use 100% pitch drift. Now let's hear it now. I tried. Sounds a million times cleaner. Again, before. I tried. Voice crack Ryan. And then after. I tried. Miracle of pitch correction. You can fix almost anything. I say almost everything you can fix. So then, as part of my record or my editing setup, after quantizing everything for the timing, I'll go back in and edit everything for pitch. So, for example, let's do this one. Same issue. I just can't sing. Let's fix this. Double click everything. Center all the pitches. Again, another gliss. Yeah, I'll fix the drift on that one because I started sharp, ended flat. I'm going to use the pitch drift. There we go. Again with this one, pitch drift. Fix that. And yeah, that's pretty much tuned. Let's listen to it. I'll fix the pitch drift on that. Perfect. Sounds good to me. Sounds good to me. So now let's listen to both of my tune tracks together. See what that sounds like. Perfect. Perfect. Yep, sounds good. Especially for a background vocal, I'm not going to be picky about the tonal qualities yet, but for tuning and timing, Sounds great to me. All right. So you first you record, then you quantize for effect change timing, then you go back and do the pitch correction to affect your pitchiness. All right. Go back to the presentation here. All right, so you've fixed your timing issues, you've fixed your pitch issues. Now we get to the fun part. So now we're going to start mixing. So now we're going to discuss this concept called set stereo field and how to set it up. So a lot of comments, especially for people who like don't know a lot about audio mixing, is you'll get this comment is that my mix sounds too thin and muddy. Maybe you'll feel this in a live performance if you're listening to a monitor and the monitor is just spitting out garbage and like I can't hear myself. Like where's the soloist? Where's the bass? I can't hear anything. Yeah, I can't hear the background vocals. I can't pick out the soloist. Bass and percussion not coming through. Well, how are we gonna fix this is the trick of the trade when it comes to audio production. So, and we're gonna fix this through the stereo field. So, what is the stereo field? The stereo field is it's an auditory representation of space and its occupation of instruments or elements in your mix. So, you refer to the picture here. This is like a good example of how it's a good example of how you can potentially set up your stereo field. So, it's important that each instrument or part that you're using occupies a certain space so that it doesn't interfere with other elements. So you can imagine, like, say, you're in a concert and you have your band and then and like your vocalist is on the stage in the center and then suddenly for whatever reason a car just comes by parks in front of the band and starts blaring its horn. Well, how are you going to hear anything because the horn's right in front of you? It's taken up that space in the stereo field, so now all you can hear is the horn and you can barely hear what's going on behind it. So it's the same concept we can apply to mixing as well. So every part should have its own space to like breathe and thrive and be able to be pronounced. And how are we going to do this? We're going to do this through panning. We're going to primarily use it just through panning, and then secondarily we're going to do some reverb. Okay. So a general tip that I like to give is that parts with similar pitch heights, so things that are singing notes that are in close proximity to each other, and parts that have similar timbre, so um, like say sops together and altos together, baritones together, basses. They should be placed in separate areas of the stereo field to avoid any clarity issues. So things that are singing in close proximity note-wise together will end up like covering each other up more frequently than not, and that causes the mix to become muddy. So try to keep these parts as separate as possible. All right, so now I'm going to go back to the mix, keeping this new information in mind. Okay, so let's listen to this again now from a mixing perspective. So let's ignore all the timing and tuning issues because we're going to assume those were fixed during the editing phase. Now we're just going to look at how things are sounding. So already it's sounding very, very thin. Like it's thin and muddy. All these all these parts here are humming for one, so that's not a particularly pronounced vocable. And second, they're all in close note proximity, so they're obviously like they're muddying each other up. And there's a reason for that. So if I go to my mix here, here are all of my parts doing the humming. They're all set to the center. So if everything's going down the center, remember that analogy with the car horn in front of the band, right? You're not going to hear all of the parts that you want to. So technique that I like to do, and this comes in handy when you're recording everything in triplicate, is that I'll keep the first center, I'll keep the first duplicate on the left, and then the third triplicate on the right. And I'm going to go through and do that for all of them. So this is the harmony. So center, left, right. And I'm doing this kind of arbitrarily, and there's a reason for that. Doing this randomly actually helps you gain wideness, I find. if you keep these all consistent, you're gonna have the same clarity issues. So I'm trying to doing this a little bit arbitrarily. All right, so and then this is the low one, so center. Let's do this a little bit more. Left, right. Now let's listen to it now. Oh yeah. Yeah, sounds a million times better already. So, all right. So this was compare. This was before. Okay, and then this was after. It already sounds a lot cleaner. Like you, that three-part harmony is really starting to come out now. And all I did was alter where those voices are in the stereo field. That's the power of doing that. So, and that's the strategy I like to employ with every single one of these parts that I do in triplicate. So, tending for the high parts, I will pan them out wider, and then and kind of gradually get closer and closer as the voices go down. But again, that's just a general tip. Your mix may have different needs, so play it by ear, quite literally. So let's go through. So let's do panning for these parts. So again, center, left, right. This one, center, left, right. The berries, center, left, right. And then the bass. The bass I want to be really prominent here. So kind of counterintuitive, but I'll keep the center and then I will pan the duplicates all the way to the left and all the way to the right. So that way you always have a bass in the center and then you always have a bass in one of your ears. That way it kind of brings out the bass forward in the mix and it gives it a bit more presence. So let's listen to this now with everything panned. Yeah, it's already getting a little bit more presence, which is great. It's fantastic. All right. So I'm listening to this with headphones, and with headphones, they tend to boost the bass. But even with these headphones, I'm struggling to hear the bass. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn these up slightly. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Good. Sweet. All right. So now we've already cleaned up a lot of the muddy and the clarity issues. So now let's play around with some effects. Um, all right. So on the right here are a list of all the effects I have at my disposal. Um, a lot of these came with the DAW. Some of them I've purchased myself. Um, okay, so let's start. Actually, I'll go to the presentation to give you kind of the summary of what these effects and what they do. Oh yes, before that, I forgot about this. So from an acapella standpoint, if you're setting up your stereo field, um, the soloist should be front and center, of course. Like your soloist is the one who's taking the lead. They should be front and center. And the background vocals, as I showed, stagger them wide. So if you're doing triplet, center, left, right, bass, front and center, right? Having a bass down the middle and then a bass in either one of your ears, so it really comes out. And VP is a bit difficult. You may want to ask your whoever your percussionist is to record each of these separately to help the audio engineer. But put your kicks and snares in general on the center. I mean, like you can play around with it if you're feeling creative, but in general, keep your kicks and snares in the center, and hi hats and any lighter elements like special effects like wind out to the sides. And then the goal of this is to set up your mix for the best clarity with an equal distribution of all elements. So making sure one side isn't getting more input than the right side, and that everything can be heard clearly, and that no one's being left out in the mix. So if panning alone doesn't work, like you're still having some muddy issues, we're gonna move to effects. So this is the fun part of mixing. It lets your creativity shine. So I'm gonna go through some effects. Like this is by no means a comprehensive list, but these are gonna be the most used as effects that you're gonna be the effects you're gonna be using most when you're mixing. So first of all is your equalizer. So this is probably one of the most versatile effects in my opinion that you can use. There's so much you can do with it. So, and I'll try to show you guys a lot of examples. So, first you can do timbre manipulation. You can remove any harsh frequencies to an extent. De-essing and bass boosting. These are all things you can do with an equalizer. And then the second thing, compression. Compression and equalizer go hand in hand, really. So especially for vocals. So if you think about this from a vocalist perspective, right? You're singing in a live setting, you have your mic in front of you. There are going to be certain sounds, like whether you intend them to be or not, that are going to be louder than others. Like think about when you talk, for example, the the vowels that you're or the words that have vowels that are open are gonna tend to be louder than words that like get your mouth closed. Like gives you more space, right? So compression, when a compressor does is that if you're finding that your vocal is very like loud and quiet, depending on the words in the phrases that you're singing, compression is an automated way to keep everything the same volume. So what it does is it reads your incoming vocal track for its loudness, and if it reaches a certain like peak loudness, it will compress it. It'll make it a bit quieter so that it fits with the rest of your vocal. So this is a great tool that allows you to perform volume automation, so you don't have to go in the vocal and manually tweak the dynamics of every single word your vocalist is singing. So you can just put a compressor on it, set it up, and it'll do the work for you, and allows you to, once you do this, you can actually increase the loudness of your vocalist without worrying about clipping because everything's now the same volume relatively. Next is reverb. Oh, we love some reverb. So this is giving artificial width to a part. So if panning doesn't do the trick, reverb will definitely do it for you. And we love doing reverb because we hear reverb all the time. Anywhere we go, we're hearing reverb. So it kind of adds an element of realism to your song. It feels like someone actually sat in a studio and recorded this, or someone went to a concert hall and is singing this live. That's probably the better example. So it's like you're getting a virtual concert. And reverb can also be used very intelligently to push things forward and back in a mix. So if panning, you can only work in one dimension where you're moving things center, left, and right. Reverb gives you that third dimension where you can push things further back in the mix or bring things out forward. Delay is another form of reverb, but it's an increased delayed onset. So again, using this with reverb, and I'll show you what I like to do with that. It gives you the illusion of performing in various venues. So say I am in let's say a parking garage, for example. Now I can put a delay effect that simulates that big open area. Or say I'm recording in like a shoebox. I can manipulate the delay to kind of give that effect as well. So these are all the things you can play with the delay. And if you're feeling really creative, you can add some distortion on your vocals. So if you want some real grit, a real punch to your vocal, a little bit of distortion can go a long way. So now let's see what some of these effects look like in action. Okay, which track should I choose? Let's go back to the ones I edited. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, so let's go use the Pro EQ plugin. I'm going to put this on my insert. So now this is what an EQ or an equalizer looks like. So So this is showing me the waveforms of my vocal coming into it. So and as we know that what makes every vocalist unique is the sound of their voice, and the sound of their voice is relative to the frequency spectrum of what they're singing. So you can see that I'm singing the note, but I'm also getting all these overtone frequencies above that gives my voice that characteristic. Okay, that's great. Now, I'm just going to set this to loop. I'm going to play around with this a bit because I'm not entirely liking how my voice is sounding. So if you don't like that, you can use an equalizer to fix it to an extent. So for example here, if my voice if I want to increase kind of like the brightness of my voice, I can go to the higher end of the spectrum and increase the frequencies there to make it a little bit brighter. You hear that? I'm not liking that, so I'm going to put that back. On the flip side, if things sound too dark, like the singer sounds like they're singing in their throat, I can turn the lows on the low end of the frequency spectrum, turn that a bit down to also bring a little bit of brightness to the vocal. It doesn't sound too bad, actually. So, and then another tip, because depending on your vocalist, like you can cut out the frequencies that you know they're never gonna use. Okay, so say everything down here for this vocalist, like this is, or for this vocal, this is a tenor part. I am not going to use any of these frequencies here, so I might as well just like cut them off. So I'm going to put in a cutoff, so none of these frequencies come through, and there's a good reason for this. So if I end up putting other elements, which I already have, like a bass or a kick drum, those parts are going to take up the low end of the frequency spectrum. So I want to make sure that any part that doesn't need to be there, that I cut that out so that the bass and the kick have more room to occupy that space. And here, like I've cut off this like this part of the frequency spectrum. It doesn't affect my vocal all that much. So let's show you. Before, after. Sounds more or less the same. Sounds more or less the same. So I'm good with that. And you can keep playing around with all the settings here. And some interesting, maybe some more creative applications of this. I'll go here. Remember I said maybe you want to emulate a location. Let's say I want to be on a telephone. We all know that effect, right? Let's say I'm on a telephone. Now, see, now it's like, yeah, like like what's that song? What is it? Telephone, Lady Gaga. I think they use this effect at one point or another in the song. I mean, they have to, right? It's called Telephone. So that's how you do it. Use an equalizer to change the sound of your vocal, and now suddenly you're speaking through a phone. But in my application here, I'm not going to use that. As cool as that is. So that's in short what an equalizer is. Yeah. Compression. Let's go on to a compressor. This is what a standard, or at least a standard compressor on Studio One looks like. Let's take a look. Oh, it's not doing anything. Okay. I'm gonna turn this up a bit. Let me know. Oh, by the way, let me know if this is too loud because I don't have a gauge for how loud this is coming through on Zoom. If it's too loud, let me know. I don't want to kill anyone's eardrums today. Oh, I found Autotune. Oops. It's real messy real quickly. No, that's not what I want to do. Okay, here I'm going to increase the volume of this a bit. Okay, so this is what a compressor does. So basically on here, you see these knobs here, is threshold, ratio, and knee. So what this threshold is it's the level, it's the loudness level that at what point you want to say, hey, this is too loud. I want you to compress this and make it quieter. Okay, so I'm gonna play around with this so you can see what happens when I turn it all the way down, all the way up. So at a really low threshold, it's telling anything higher than this threshold, turn it down. So like at a threshold this low, it's turning everything down. Okay. So the key is to find what level you want to compress at and what level you want to keep consistent. So putting some slight compression on a vocal works really nicely to even out the volume overall. And obviously seeing here as it's going, this yellow line is showing you that the compressor is activating. So it's actively turning down the volume. The ratio is just how to like it's to I think it's to what extent does the volume go down by. So a higher ratio means a higher compression rate and a lower ratio vice versa. So if I turn the ratio up, it will compress harder and faster than a lower ratio. See, now it's attacking it really fast. And knee, I think, is just the path that the volume takes when it's going down and going back up. I don't really use knee very often. I'll just use one of these presets to do it. And that's the case with a lot of these plugins, actually. I don't know what half of these knobs will do. So if this looks overwhelming, don't worry. I also don't know what a lot of these knobs do. It's just a matter of toying around with it, knowing what the key ones do. So the threshold and ratio and knee, these are the ones you're going to look out for. And using them until you get the sound that you like. There's also these knobs here that are attack and release. So when you compress, how fast does the compressor turn on? In this case, it's at 15 milliseconds. So as soon as the compressor detects something's too loud, it'll take 15 milliseconds and it will compress it. And then the release is after that loudness has passed. Then when does the compressor let off? So once the compressor attacks, it takes 120 milliseconds for it to back off the compression, so the track can go back to its original volume. So release, you want a lower release if you want, I believe, more clarity or more. So like say you have really you want sharp consonants, you want a short release, so your compressor can back off really, like your volume can go back up really quickly, especially for quick consonants. A slow release maybe for you maybe want that for some like drones, so maybe people are singing ooh for a long period of time, you want that constantly compressed. A longer release time will be good for that to kind of get this trancey vibe. And yeah, there's some applications of the compressor. Now the fun stuff, reverb. Which reverb shall I use today? Let's go with room reverb. I like room reverb. Room reverb. So I've put room reverb on this track. Let's hear what it sounds like. I'll turn off the compressor. That's what's doing it. Beautiful. Love it. Love reverb because like you can even make like a really bad vocal like tonally like immediately sounds a lot better. So great way. It's a great, quick and dirty way to fix your any pitch issues. Just add a lot of reverb to it. Okay, and reverb with this plugin is specifically there's a lot of presets you can use. So, um, to what point does the reverb start? How long does it linger? The mix between the dry signal, wet signal, the size of the room. You can even determine the width of the room, the height of the room. That's just what this plugin does. It's really really cool. Let's say I want to be in. Let's look at our options here. I'm gonna be in a concert hall today. Let's hear what that sounds like. Beautiful, beautiful. Now, this is great, but as I'll show you, this reverb is only on this channel. So now this is kind of going to go into the mixing workflow. So now it's great that we have all these plugins. So, but now the problem is I have like 50 tracks on this, right? Am I actually going to go on and put I'm going to put an EQ, a compressor, a room reverb, probably some delay, maybe some distortion. I'm going to put those 5 plugins on every single track. So that's probably going to be 250 effects. The answer is no. Like that's first of all, you're going to kill your PC because no computer, at least to my knowledge, has that much power. Like you're going to crash your system. And two, because there's so many plugins going on at the same time, it's going to lag your song to the point that it's not even workable anymore. So, what we're going to do is we're going to create I'm going to remove the reverb here. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to select all these background tracks here. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. All these tracks, these background tracks, I'm going to exclude the bass for now. All these background tracks, I'm going to highlight them, right click, and we're going to do something called, yeah, I guess we could use a bus. Yeah, we'll use a bus. And name this bus BG Vocals. So now, basically what this does is now all of these background vocals will now go through this bus before going onto the main track, which is what we're hearing. So before everything was going directly to the main, so that's what you were hearing. But now, before things get to the main, they're going to go through this bus. And now there's an advantage to that. Why would we ever want to do this? Well, now what we can do is I can put reverb on this bus, and now let's listen to what happens. So now what this is doing is that every single track attached to the bus now is going through the reverb. So it's one plugin, but now all 50-ish vocals are now going through through that single reverb plugin. So now instead of us having to use 50 reverb plugins, we can use one through a bus system. So this is a quick way, especially if you know all these background vocals are going to be processed the same way. You can throw a single reverb on it, and there you go. That's it. And I'm going to put a concert hall for all of these. That's too much delay. Let's flat play it. Let's try that. That's pretty cool. Okay. Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Oh, okay, cool, cool, cool. All right. Now I'm going to use this bus for the remaining effects. So next, we're going to go to delay. Let's put it after. And yeah, so if you're wondering, the placement of these effects does matter. So you see here, this is one room reverb, and then two analog delay. So what this means is that when these tracks are going through the bus, it's first going to be affected by the room reverb, and then it's going to be affected by this analog delay. Okay, so I can flip it and do the opposite. So I can have it be delayed first and then reverbed. And I'll play around with it depends on which application and what sound you're going for, but let's try with the delay after the reverb and see what happens. So first, Let's hear what delay does to everything. So are you hearing that? So what it's doing is it's taking the input vocals from the reverb and just copying it and pasting it over and over and over again. So imagine in your cave, right? You can hear your voice bouncing off all the walls. That's what this plugin is doing. This is great for vocals. It's great for making everything sound a bit more nicer together. It gives the vocals more width and more presence, and I love using it. Now, there's a lot of different options you can do with analog delay if you want to be really creative. For example, there's this effect called the Pong. Now, this will be good if you're wearing headphones. Now, listen to what happens. You hear that? So it's taking the first signal and then copying it, and then the left, and then right ear, right ear, and alternating. It's a really cool ping pong effect, which is why it's called the Pong. What I tend to like to use is this preset called Sweeten Vocal. So it's a very subtle delay, but it's enough to give your vocals a little bit more width than the reverb does, while still kind of giving a natural feel and cleaning up the vocals a bit. So let's listen to this. So it's very subtle. Like it's like one delay after, but it gives it, especially because everyone's just singing one chord note, duh, and then nothing. So reverb analog delay is perfect because it gives those notes time to linger in the empty space, and it really adds to the effect. Yeah, I like that. I like that. So let's see, for example, what happened. Actually, that's probably not a good example. Let's try the Pong effect because that'll probably be more distinct. So if you can pick up on that, it sounds slightly different than what it was when it was in front. So let's hear it again when it was in behind the reverb. Now we'll put it in front. So I'll say this again: placement matters. So in this case, what it's doing, it's taking the dry vocals going into the delay first. So you're hearing the dry vocal and being ping ponged in each of your ears, and then the whole thing is being reverbed. So it's a bit more clearer. Whereas with like you can hear the diction a bit. Granted, we're just saying but you get the idea. But in this case, the vocals are all going through the reverb, and then the ping pong effect is ping ponging the reverb instead of the dry vocal into each of your ears. It's a slight difference, but it shows you how the placement of these effects matter. Cool. And then yeah, maybe okay, yeah, let's okay, I'm gonna play around with a bit of distortion. So I'm gonna get rid of this for now. And let's play with some distortion. I will admit I do not use distortion very often, especially because like I'm only using vocal. I mean, working with vocals, right? It makes sense if you're doing like a rock track, you're using like guitars and other instruments that like this would be perfect for. But I know some, especially pop artists, if they want their vocal to stand up over the background instruments, they will add a slight bit of distortion to the main vocal that gives it a bit of grit, a little bit of power, and it allows the vocal to kind of sit over top. It allows it to sit over top the background. So this is the distortion plugin that Studio One provides. It's called Red Light, and let's see what it does. Ooh, that's wicked. And let's put it in front of the reverb, see how that changes the sound. Oh, wait, just for curiosity's sake, let's turn off the reverb and see what the distortion sounds like on its own. Oh yeah. It's like broken record. It's like broken record sounding. Again, I don't use this plugin very often, but you can see some of the applications you can use with distortion, and a lot of these other plugins as well. I have time. Okay. And then mixing, yeah, it's just finding what effects you want for each of your sections. So if you're singing oohs, maybe a lot. If you're going for a trancy effect, maybe using a whole ton of reverb and a whole lot of delay to kind of give you this atmospheric vibe. If you're doing a very high tempo pop song that's very snappy, you definitely tend to use more pro EQ, more compression, and less on the reverb because you want all the diction to stand out very prominently, more clearly. So it all depends on what your needs are and using the effects accordingly. Anything else? Yeah, maybe. I also have Autotune. Let's play around with Autotune. Why not? I have a bit of time. Autotune. The industry favorites. Autotune. So what's key? Are we in? We're in B flat minor. So this is what Autotune from Antares looks like. To my knowledge, this is like the big Autotune plugin. I'm not aware of any others. I'm sure there are, but this is the big one. So I think we're in B flat major. So you can set the voice type, the key, and this is important to set up because it won't auto-tune properly if it's not. And I think, sure, maybe we're in major. Who knows? We'll find out. Let's see. Good old auto-tune. What have you done to my background track? Okay, no, I think we're in yeah, we are in minor. That sounds pretty good. Now let's turn this all the way up. So let's turn routine speed 0. This is like prime auto tune. Oh yeah. Oh, amazing. I love this. I love this plugin. It's great. That's not the only thing though. I have some other effects with auto tune that you can use. And like this is one plugin. Like these are all effects from one plugin. And you imagine how many plugins there are and then how many presets you have. You can lose yourself in how many different things you can do. Let's see. You are a robot. That sounds interesting. That's awesome. That's awesome. Again, I probably would never use that, but it's pretty cool. Alien Droid. Sure, why not? That's pretty cool. What would I actually use? There's an option. There is an effect here that I do use. Harmonizer? Sure, let's try that. Oh, that's interesting. Shimmer? Maybe? Oh, that's trippy. No, there is a pitch change function here. Just gotta remember where it is. Higher harmonic, maybe? Nope. Oh, I think it's one of these. I think it's one of these. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, if I want to change the pitch, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. So this is pitch down. Shout out to all your rappers who use that plugin. And let's try this one. And anyone making Christmas music, wanted doing a chipmunk cover, that's what you do for that. And yeah, okay, that's Autotune. It's very powerful. Tons of things you can do. Perfect. All right. So that's kind of a general overview of mixing. Again, like you can spend hours and hours and hours playing around with all the effects and playing around. But the general rule for mixing is putting all the effects that you want for that specific chunk of whether if it's a verse or a chorus, what vibe you're going for. If it's trancy, is it very like outer spacey type vibe? Is it very powerful, very punchy? You're going to use effects accordingly. Obviously, I only have 2 hours here, so I'm not going to be able to mix an entire track in front of you. But these are the types of things that I keep in mind. So, like using your creativity and finding new ways to implement these vocals in new ways. And that's also something I like to listen to when I'm listening to other arrangements of other like what other people are doing. Like how are they using these effects creatively to give their song an interesting kind of hook or an effect. All right. And finally, we've gone to the last part of our audio production, which is mastering. So, what is mastering? Oh, mastering is ensuring, in a nutshell, ensuring your mix sounds good on all platforms. So, in terms of loudness and timbre and overall general balance. So, mastering is mixing, but for the big picture. So you can see when we were mixing, I was going track by track in general, kind of going using different effects to see what makes each track better. Mastering is taking the whole song and putting some effects on it to balance it out in general. Okay, so in case you don't know, some different platforms, like especially like streaming platforms, so Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, they all have different audio requirements for their audio submissions. Okay, so for example, you see on this list here, each of these platforms has a recommended loudness that they want their song all their submissions to be. So LUFS, it just stands for loudness units, and this is something you can check for in your DAW. I'll show you how to do that. Um, so if you were submitting a song and your song is louder than these requirements, there's an algorithm with each of these streaming sites that will take your song and artificially compress it. Remember, I talked to you about compression. It will use this algorithm to artificially compress your song so that it fits within these parameters. And oftentimes, when it does that, it's going to warp the sound of your song to the point where it's almost unrecognizable. Like what you hear when you submit it is not going to be what you hear in your DAW. So what mastering allows you to do is allows you to keep the integrity of your mix without having to jump through all those hoops for each of these platforms. Okay. And then the other thing that important to note for mastering is that not all systems are created equal. Okay. So you're not going to get the same audio quality from phone speakers versus studio speakers, right? So if you're listening to a song through your phone, you're listening to it with some headphones, you're listening to it in the car, on the radio. These all have different audio capabilities. And then the key with mastering is that your song sounds good no matter what system you use to play it. So with mastering, you're going to be exporting your song probably numerous times to play it anywhere you can. You know, play on your headphones, play on your laptop, play on your phone, play it in the car, um, and then make notes. See like what happens when I play it on this system. Oh, it sounds too bassy. Maybe I should turn that down. What happens on this system? Oh, I can't really hear the soloist anymore. Maybe I should turn that up a bit. So these are things that are good to keep in mind when you're mastering to make sure that no matter who's listening to it on what device, they're going to get a good experience no matter what. I'll go back to my DAW again. So now let's pretend I'm super happy with how this turned out. It sounds fantastic. I am ready to export it. So I'm going to go to the mastering phase. So for mastering, I like to use, I'm going to turn this back on, this thing called Fat Channel. Put this on the main channel. So notice I'm taking this effect, putting on the main channel. So remember I was talking to you guys about the bus. So all the vocals right now, if I can illustrate it, the vocals are going through the bus, and then the bus is going towards the main. So if you can visualize this, all the vocals are going through room reverb on the bus, and then the bus is sending this to my new fat channel, which then goes out through the main. So I like Fat Channel because it has a bunch of different mastering presets that I like to use. So it limits the amount of work I have to actually put in, which is nice. So let's do Master Clear. Let's do Master Clear. And let's listen to this before and after. It's very subtle what it's just doing, but I'll show you. Okay, so this is before, and I'll turn it on so you kind of, if you can hear a difference. So it's limiting the sound a bit, but it also has an equalizer as part of it too. So let's listen to this again. Okay, so first thing I'm noticing is the bass is still very quiet. So there are two things I can do with that. First, I can go back in with the bass tracks and put it up on the faders, or I can use this equalizer on the master and pump up the lower frequencies because that's what the bass is. Let's try that. Oh yeah, there you go. A little bit more. That sounds pretty good. That sounds pretty good. Obviously, this track isn't done yet, but if I were to master it, I think it's pretty good balance. Yeah. And then remember, I was talking to you guys about the volume. Okay. So remember, one of the most important effects that I mentioned that you guys should have is this thing called a level meter, or something that will allow you to check how loud your track is. So, and remember, what we're looking for is the LUFS units because that's what we're going to compare to when we're submitting this song to all these streaming platforms. Right side. One second. Maybe that is. There we go. It's at the bottom there. My bad. Da, 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 da. So now we're looking at this number. This number is our LUFS. So this is our loudness unit. So this is what we're going to be looking for. Okay. It's sitting around minus 17. So when you go back to look at the chart, I'd say that is on the low end. So there is room to increase the volume a bit. So I'm going to increase the volume slightly. Turn that down. Now we're sitting around minus 15, minus 14. Yeah, that's pretty good. Now, if you're having real issues with this leveling, again, that means you probably have to go back to the mixing phase and then applying some general compression to some vocals that are just too loud. Like, for example, let's say your chorus is louder than your verse, but it's to an extent that it's pushing your mix overboard. So you may have to go back to your chorus mix and turn that down a bit in order to get something that's submittable. Because remember, if your song on average is over the guidelines for the streaming service, the streaming service will artificially compress your mix and it'll distort the heck out of it. So that's mastering in a nutshell. I know it's not not really interesting. And this part of music production is the most commonly outsourced to other studios or other audio engineers. Like I only have these tools, which is still very bare bones in my opinion. A lot of these studios and audio engineers will have like very sophisticated mastering equipment and will know the requirements for all these streaming services and know what sounds great and what doesn't. And that's why when a lot of people do this, like they will do a preliminary mix and master and then send it off to another engineer to do the final master for all these services. Again, if you're an independent artist, you don't necessarily need to do that. Like the change, as you saw, the changes for the master are very, very subtle. And you're starting at like, is it worth the money to pay all that to pay another engineer to master your track when it doesn't change all that much? But this is the bare bones mastering techniques. These are the things that you'll need to know when you're doing your track. I won't go into the nitty gritty of what other people are doing, but just know there's a lot of stuff out there, and it's easy to outsource the mastering. You can actually even get algorithms to do it for you online, like AI, just to master your track. There are things for that now. You can imagine. Okay, we've gone through all the four steps you need to know as an audio producer. But what are your next steps after this? Obviously, keep listening and keep learning. Like the more you do this, the better each of your mixes is going to be. And uh, the only way to improve is to experiment and do as many songs as you can. If you've seen like any of my previous work, like I released a song, a cover of Believe back in I think last January, and it was the first time I've ever picked up a DAW and even knew what mixing was. I recorded each track once and tried to put all the effects on every single track, and it's like it's okay, but um, again, I wouldn't have known the things I know now without having to actually go in, do it, try some different techniques, try some different workflows, seeing what works best, seeing what crashes my computer and what doesn't. Um, so keep doing it, keep trying things, keep trying new things. And another thing is like repeat the exercise we did at the beginning of this workshop. Listen to music, listen to some of your favorite songs with this new knowledge in mind. Like so, see if you can pick up some interesting effects or mixing tricks. Maybe they pan some instruments in an interesting way, or maybe they have, for example, if I can think, um, what a lot of pop artists do nowadays is that they use reverb, but then in post they will reverse the reverb, so you get uh, that kind of sound, and it acts as a really cool hook. So that's what I'm seeing a lot of artists do, and that's a producing effect. That's something you can do in your DAW. So think of these little small techniques that these leaders in the industry are doing, and seeing like what can you do with your own mixes. Like, oh, maybe this effect would be good in my arrangement for this verse, or maybe this is a good way for the song to stand out a bit. It's a great way to learn, absolutely. And as I said, start doing your own mixes. Like the reason I picked up Studio One is because it offers it's called Studio One Prime. It's a free version. So if you don't know anything about the DAW, I recommend like pick that one up because it's free. And it gives you some bare bones effects that you can use. So you can kind of get a feel for what the interface is and what it looks like and how to set up things. And then as you progress, you can go up to like the paid versions if you want, like if you want, of course, and get creative, new, learn, and interesting techniques. And yeah, I think we'll send these slides out to everyone after the workshop. So, um, and that's the case. This slide has some of my favorite mixes. So, in case you end up doing research on like some certain songs, I recommend you listen to these. See if you can pick up what makes these songs and these arrangements stand out. Maybe it's the arrangement themselves, but um, with a really good song, the arrangement and the production go hand in hand. So there's creativity on both ends. So try to pick up specifically on the mixing end what the producer's doing and see like to and how they're making each effect. Yeah, so that brings me to the end of the presentation. So I'd like to open the floor for any questions you guys may have. I can go back to the DAW and maybe do some more things. And floor is yours. If you have any questions, let me know.